Chris, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
100%. We chopped it up for about 43 minutes before press and record. Hopefully we don't have a hard stop here. For people that don't know you and your story, give us a spark notes. You know who you are, where you coming from, what are you doing now?
Okay, where I am, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I've got a company called Gusher, which is a platform to launch companies without the need for capital. In the past, I've run more than 24 companies, everything from manufacturing to medical devices. My products have been sold, physical products, in more than 11,000 stores, 23 countries. I've got users of my tech products everywhere, in basically 148 countries across the globe.
Dang. First of all, I love the name. Gushers were one of my favorite snacks growing up. Wildly unhealthy, but they're still incredible. I saw that when I saw you on my calendar. I'm like, wait a second, Gusher? And then I had to do some digging, but great name.
Well, it's funny because we get about one complaint a week from people that think that we manufacture candies, complaining about they're all red Gushers in their box. And those are always interesting emails that we get.
Yeah, first world problems. You got
Yeah,
Gushers, pipe down, you know. Um, how'd you get into this? So you're obviously like serial entrepreneur, creating very successful companies. What did the early years look like? How did you get into this entrepreneurial world? Because now it's the cool thing to do, but I'd imagine if you're 24 companies in, it might have been a little different when you started.
Absolutely. There was no such thing as venture capital, at least not in the common context. There were no such thing as capital ecosystems. Angel investors were something that really didn't even exist at the time. And in terms of the way that I formed my own business as well, going way back, I started my first business when I was 6 years old in the middle of Ohio. In terms of growing up there in the middle of nothing. But really what it comes down to is I started out doing something that we used to call finagling. A long time ago, basically, you didn't need money to necessarily start a business. You would basically talk your way into starting a business. And there are definitely techniques of doing it. If I needed a patent attorney, I didn't have to come up with 20, 30, 40, 50 grand to patent something. I just had to find a patent attorney that believed in what I was doing and was willing to take a little bit of a risk, and they take 0.5% or 1% of the deal. If I needed real estate, which I did in New York, in the middle of what the hell was it, 56th and 5th Avenue or Park Avenue? Well, I didn't have $250,000 or $500,000 to do that deal. I went ahead and dealt directly with the landlord, the developer, who owned 70% of Long Island City at the time. And I brought him in on the deal. He owned part of the deal. And so I start from way back in terms of really creating this type of deal and getting companies off the ground using nothing but your ingenuity, your mind, and your skills in terms of getting it off the ground.
Got it. So it's a whole lot of just, I guess, creative deal structure. Like the term creative finance has just been stuck in my head. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I'm about to buy a house in the next year, or I don't know if it's because of the nature of the conversations we're having right now, but like creative deal structuring, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, think of this. I mean, what we deal is something called performance-based equity. So, with the platform and how we form companies now is people join your company in exchange for performance-based equity. What do I mean by that? What I tell founders is imagine you had $1 million or 2 million in the bank account right this second. What type of company would you build with that? How would you build out your company? And then Gusher that, because we do it all day, every day. So what happens is these people join your company, they believe in what you're doing, and they're able to get you from 0 to 1. It's a way to get the company off the ground. Now, they may be located all over the globe. They may not be in your backyard, but really you want a group of people that fundamentally pull that sled up the mountain and believe in what you're doing. And that's a big deal. It's a big way of doing it. Creative financing, there's all different ways of doing it, dealing with everything from manufacturers to the actual distribution, to marketing, to PR, to you name it. But I don't kid when I say this. Getting to the $10 million in sales volume level, you do not need a penny. Nothing, zero, nada, zippo. After that, it becomes a standardized type of play, a standardized type of company. But getting from 0 to 10 million, you don't need anything but yourself. You have all the tools you need right this second.
That's super interesting to me because the interesting part is that you did not add any caveat or any asterisk around industry. Now, I
No.
come from the service-based industry, so I can do that. Like I can bootstrap and like
Yep.
very lean in a very lean way, build a company that I'm essentially selling man hours and then using that capital to scale people.
Absolutely.
Right. Many other industries have very different barriers to entry. So I'd love for you to unpack that a little bit, because I'd
Sure.
imagine that some people are listening to this and they're like, but I need to go buy a building that's $1
Right,
million,
right, right.
or like, but I need to pay for manufacturing or proof of
Manufacturing, right. We
concept
hear
or
that one all the
MVP.
time. Right.
Unpack that a little bit and shatter those beliefs, please.
So this is going to make sense at the end. This is a roundabout way of explaining, but I've got to lay the foundation. Okay. So there's something called the vested interest market, the VIM. Okay. So let's say I'm starting a dog food company. All right. What I say to myself right off the bat, and dog food is an extremely capital intensive business. I'm using that as an example. It's one of the companies on our platform, but it's going to make sense at the end. Okay. So when you're starting a dog food company, who are the VIM? Who are the people that have the most to gain from this company either succeeding or failing? Okay. What you've got to think is, all right, well, who are the people that really do this? Well, number one, the people that are going to end up building the company are all going to be dog owners. They end up being dog zealots. They get the company, they get what you're doing. But
Yeah.
now let's extend it further. Who are the people that have the most to gain? Well, if you're manufacturing a product, well, the actual physical manufacturer of that food product, the actual food, is one obvious thing, okay? You have the ingredient suppliers, the actual core ingredient suppliers that benefit from you from selling more units. You have the packaging company that goes ahead and benefits from you selling more units progressively. And so in terms of putting the deal together, what you're basically doing is making an argument, a case to people that have the highest vested interest in your success to get you out the door. So what they end up using is their excess capacity. Their excess capacity is really what you're looking for to be able to take advantage of to get your company to that first level. Does that mean you're going to use them to generate $5 million of credit right off the bat? No. Does it mean that you're going to use them to get your first 50 grand, your first 100,000, your first $250,000? Absolutely. And there's ways of doing it. And there's types of companies that do it and types of companies that don't do it. But you have to know what to say, how to build the relationships. And that's where we come in.
Excess capacity. So are you
Yeah.
talking primarily financial? Is that like a human resources type of thing? Like, what do you mean exactly?
So let's say that you are and I'm just going to say a chemist or a formulator. So let's say you're somebody that creates products. You're working for another food company. All right. Well, that chemist works from 9 to 5 and then he goes home. And so he's got Saturday, he's got Sunday, he's got from 5 p.m. to 12 p.m. 12 midnight or whatever it may be. So he's got literally anywhere from 50 to 70 hours of excess capacity that he can choose, yes, to go take care of his kids, take them to wrestling and play around, or he can choose to get involved in a deal with his specialty, his laser-like focus, and join your company and help you develop a product. What we're using is the excess capacity of people skill at a high level. So they're not necessarily going to be working all the time on your deal. They come in, they're very precise, and they help you get your company off the ground. And they believe in fundamentally what you're doing.
Got it. Got it. And to your beginning example, I'd imagine they do that in exchange for, you said, performance-based equity. So as a product gets off the ground, then they get a piece of the pie, essentially.
Exactly. It's a way to have ownership. And what it does is, and we've seen a tremendous amount of this since COVID, is people really don't want to fundamentally invest their time in an organization that they can be wiped off the face of this earth when it comes to their job and income. And that's the only source of their investment or income. So what they're really looking to do is get other horses in the race. They want to be their own master of their own destiny. So it's a way to get involved with companies that are really building really neat things that they believe in and that they understand.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I was on a mastermind call literally an hour and a half ago, and
Sure.
they were talking about the exact same thing from a marketing perspective, right? Like hiring a marketing consultant for 20, 30 grand and leveraging their time outside of it. Now, obviously, we're there and they're talking about exchanging capital for it, but
Sure.
same concept, right?
Well, let me throw one thing out at you that this is the key thing. This is the key thesis, metric, whatever you want to call it. All right. Pretty much anyone will join a company, all right, to go ahead and get a paycheck or a certain amount of money, even if they fundamentally don't believe in it. All right. So, who the hell is going to join a company in exchange for performance based equity for something that they don't fundamentally believe in? So, what it really is a market vetting mechanism to get the right type of team, the team that actually fundamentally believes in that idea. And that results in a fundamentally different product, a different way of creating companies. You get people that really get what you're doing from the beginning, from the ideation stage, so that leapfrogs development and you create a market viable company, not a minimum viable product.
That is interesting. And that makes perfect sense to me. Specifically, like, I try not to cast blanket statements,
Sure.
but I am not, I'll just put it this way. I am not jealous of my friends and colleagues who run brick and mortar stores and are reliant on personnel like it locally,
Sure.
especially at like minimum wage type positions. Because what we see time and time again is that there's a whole lot of entitlement. There's not, and again, like trying not to cast blanket statements, but just seeing the experience, it's like a lot of entitlement, a lot of laziness. Like, meanwhile, I have a very international company and everyone on my team is just straight killers, whether they're
Right.
here, like South America, Europe, doesn't matter where they are, they're killing it.
And they're hungry.
Yeah. So if you can vet that out, that makes perfect sense because everything's aligned.
And that's the key, including us. We're the same way. We're performance-based equity. We only succeed if you succeed. So when you have everybody rowing in the same direction, things go fast. Things go very, very fast. But also, the boat that's built is just better. It just is. When people are trying to go from zero to launch and they all have something in it involved, then better products, better companies are created from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. The vested interest is completely aligned, which is super interesting to me. And
Yep.
like something that we've always used as a huge selling point when we're negotiating performance contracts with B2B companies. So like,
Yes.
yeah, sure, you could keep like why do that if I know I can really confidently say, hey, I'm gonna make you an extra $10 million this year. I just want one of them,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it's $10 million that you didn't have. It's like an extra $10 million. And I can
Yep.
very confidently say that that work is worth $1 million because I know how good we are at what we do. And from that perspective, I have all the right energy in the world to be able to do that.
And that's the way to do it. I
It's
mean,
completely
you're
aligned.
sharing it, but also what we've seen is a trend with entrepreneurship that almost what you just described there, where yes, you should see a percentage of it, everything else, I'm going to take it a one step further. All right. If you're performing at that level and bringing 10 million into a company, all right, and your knowledge base has resulted in that, should you really be something that you're just getting the cash compensation? Yes, that's beautiful. Or should you really have a fundamental piece of the pie because you've changed almost in a way fundamentally what that business is? You've literally taken them to a different level. And my personal belief is, and it's not even tied to Gusher, is that you fundamentally should have a piece of that pie, period, because you've taken it to the next level.
Yeah. Do you believe this is actually interesting? And these are conversations I've had behind closed doors, but it'll be cool to just air the dirty laundry out here, right? Um, I've always used, and this might be limiting beliefs for me, and I'm open to that being the reality. I've always viewed that it was like, hey, earn your keep, and then we renegotiate at a certain time frame. Like, is that kind of how you guys operate? Like, cool, have it be, we'll use this same example, have it be a retainer that just gets my people paid. We don't cash flow a ton, but in 90 days, we know we're going to renegotiate. Then we talk maybe performance. If we crush it again another 6 to 12 months, then maybe there's an ownership opportunity. Like, is that kind of the flow there?
Yeah, you can definitely do that. What we always insist on is that performance from the get-go, because there has to be something measurable and objective, and it's got to be performance on a team-wide basis. Yes, you have individuals that might outperform, but in our scenarios, unless everybody performs, you end up having a company that's dead on arrival. It's DOA. So the fact of the matter is they have to perform almost as a group to be able to get there. And so, when it comes to other people and existing what we call legacy companies that are already in business, yeah, I mean, going ahead and having something that is performance based, that's not just based upon time. It's not like after a year, you're going to get this amount of equity. Fuck that. You've got to have it where there are specific goals hit, and you can go ahead and reevaluate at specific periods. If those goals are hit, time to go ahead and have another goal, time to have another goal, time to have another goal, and that stuff is important. But what we find is that the people having an ownership mentality, having a piece of the pie at some stage based upon their performance, based upon merit, goes a long way, a very long way.
Got it. And when you say having these targets, are you saying like maybe that performance is unlocked at a certain target that the deal gets hit at? So like, for example, let's say we'll use simple numbers and say it's like sales volume, right?
Yep.
So like, let's say they're doing 50 contracts a month.
Right.
And we come in and we say, hey, like when we get you, not if, but when we get you to 10 or 100 contracts a month, then we get a certain dollar amount or a certain percentage. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Like unlocking new levels?
Yes and no. So let me explain. With legacy companies, and when I say legacy companies, I mean a business that already has revenue. Okay. So with legacy companies, situations like that absolutely work. It's something where you can go ahead and have sales numbers, volumes, targets that have what you're trying to accomplish, because the team almost in a way is reinventing itself for how to get from where you are, let's say at $1 million, and now how to get you to 10 million. That is the main goal, figuring out how to get there. All right. But with a startup, it's fundamentally different. With a startup, it would be the actual precise creation of whatever their vertical is. Let me give an example. So if it's something like package design, well, a packaging designer, they went through the iterations, they created the packaging. You now have the packaging that's been finalized. They've done their goal. They've accomplished it. It's ready to go. Something like a formulator, a front-end developer, back-end developer, when they're able to develop that to the satisfaction or whatever the goals are, they've accomplished it. They've been able to get to their goal and do it. So in the first stages, it's not necessarily tied to revenue because you can't do it. It's tied to launch. Whenever you launch and get into the marketplace, now it's fundamentally a different company at a different stage.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm glad you defined legacy, because I think we could take that word pretty far.
Yeah, definitely. It can mean all different things.
Yeah, that's interesting. At what point, I think you said what, 6 years old, you created your first company? Like, obviously back then this was probably inherent, right? Like we're way super creative as human beings. Actually, before I ask this question, this is what's so cool to me about this, because obviously I'm an engineer by trade.
Right.
I'm also a coach. Like, I believe that curiosity is one of, if not the most important skill sets to develop, not only as a human, but especially as an entrepreneur and a business owner. And this is all just creative problem solving.
Yes.
Like, it's all problem solving and just creativity, curiosity, like all of the above, which is so cool to me. And maybe it's cool to me because it's so contrary to like popular belief and the systems we've been sold. Like,
Sure.
You can't do it that way. Why? Because that's not how it's done. Wrong answer. Why?
Yep.
Like, I don't know. I just never liked that. So this is really,
well, I mean, you've always got the status quo of what's accepted. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you poll 100% of business owners, only 70, maybe 70 to 80% of them will say fundamentally their business has no real big selling points of differentiation from their competitors. So that there right off the bat tells you that they're doing things a standard way. They're doing things a routine way. They're doing things where they're almost in a way not thinking outside the box. And I hate that term, but really what they're doing is just a pattern. They're existing. They're almost in a way making money in spite of themselves. But also think of this from the entrepreneurial perspective. That's raw opportunity. That's raw opportunity to create anything and be able to get a foothold. So anybody that is a different founder, well, you by yourself, your DNA is going to separate you from your competitor. You and your product iteration, your product voice, your the way that you market it, the way that you price it, all these different variables go ahead and come in and can separate you from your competition. It's not just one thing. So you can always reinvent to the point of becoming cash flow positive and actually having a profitable company. It's just a function of iterations and creativity.
Yeah. So interesting. All right. So back to the question. Six
Sure.
6 years old. Obviously, you have to
Yeah.
use a lot of creativity at 6. You know, like 6 is impressive. I think I was like, how old are you in 5th grade? 10?
Yes, 10.
Yeah. So I was 10 and I was like convincing my parents to go to the store and buy me like $30 worth of duct tape
Sure.
and like Velcro latches and things.
Good idea.
Um, so and that was the best because I had to give them zero equity.
Right.
I got
Exactly.
everything. So we were way better when we were kids. At what point in like I'll call it like the adult entrepreneurial journey. That's typically how I explain my life.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
at what point did you go back to these roots and like figure out that like this was a viable option? Were you doing this for all the other 23
Yeah.
companies?
Yeah, well, yes and no. So there were certain things where you would go ahead and shoestring a certain way because there was absolutely no option, no other way to do it because didn't have money. Yes, I was a stockbroker at an early age, a very early age, the youngest at the time. Yes, I had certain cash flow from that at the time, kind of similar to you. But was it enough to do the deals and stuff that I wanted to do? No. I mean, but it really goes back to seeing my mom basically being stuck in a catch-22 scenario where she was working a low-level government job, yet she always had business ideas and was always, I felt, brilliant, but seeing these things before they happened. I mean, she
Yeah.
had that entrepreneurial DNA, and she was always in a catch-22. So, later in life, she did make it in her 50s, in a really big way. But having seen that, there are people just across this globe. I think there's the vast majority of people have some pretty damn good ideas stuck in their head, but they have no ability to make it happen. So I fundamentally believe that talent is spread evenly, opportunity isn't. And so there had to be a way to address that. And so that's kind of the way that I set out to do it. I didn't have a purpose to go ahead and, let's say, create Gusher. It really evolved into that. And I kept tackling these problems in different ways. Most of them were basically started with nothing. One of my largest was started with $1,200 to my name. And I slept on a factory floor for years to get that off the ground. There were at times friends and family rounds that came in. At times we did actually get VC funding and scale certain of them, but almost all of them were started with pretty much nothing or very next to nothing.
Interesting. Okay. Now talk to me about the name because you used Gusher as a verb at one
Yes.
point early on.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm fascinated by that. Where did the name come from and what does it mean to gush or something?
Well, then if you take a look at Virgin, okay, Virgin basically took a word that meant something completely different, revamped it, had it almost in a way an evocative meaning, but then it had turned it into these brands that were phenomenal. All right. We know Virgin Mobile, Virgin Atlantic, Virgin this, Virgin that. All right. So when it comes to naming a company, I like to go for the evocative. But the term gusher itself, yes, it's got a candy if you're gushers. It knows there's a certain appeal there. But gusher itself, really, nothing was out there for it. I saw a movie called Giant that was a very old movie with James Dean back in the 50s. And there was always a scene, or I should say there was a scene of James Dean where he was a wildcatter for oil. He was dirt poor. He had a little tiny thing in Texas. He didn't have a pot to piss in. And he's literally wildcatting, which means randomly drilling for oil to hopefully hit something. And he hit something. And he hit something. And it was a gusher. And literally it changed his whole entire life. And it changed in the movie, changed the world, or what he was able to do. So the term gusher to me just, it has a different meaning. And it's something that we are there creating these companies, helping people create these companies that hopefully does the same thing for them.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And
However, people in England really laugh at me because it obviously means something very, very different there. So we always get a kick in England, but we have companies in England.
that's so funny.
Yeah.
It's yeah, there's it's always interesting when slang in another country has a completely different meaning here. Um,
And you can only catch so many of them. You can't please the whole world with a name.
uh, 100%, 100%. Okay, so as a company, you alluded to this earlier, but for people that are like, okay, cool. So what does Gusher do? How do you explain that? You mentioned that you're a performance equity type partner.
Yeah.
What is your business model as you're helping these companies grow?
Sure. So let me say it all in one fell swoop. All right. Gusher is a platform to launch companies without the need for capital, without the need for investors. People apply to join your company in exchange for performance-based equity. And so, as I said earlier, what we tell founders is if you had $1 million or $2 million in the bank account, how would you build out your company? What would you do? And then Gusher that, because we do it all day, every day. Everything from B2B, B2C, B2B2C, and everything in between. Consumer goods, manufacturing, SaaS, fintech, AR, VR, AI, gaming, medical devices, prop tech, you name it, we've got it. More importantly, and this is really key, our company's success rate, we have more than 80% success rate where these companies become self-sustaining and or attract larger scale capital. And we're an equity player also. We get nothing unless the company is able to launch successfully.
Wow. So are your clients are all like ideation stage, and then you help them bring them to like creation and launch?
That's about 90% of our companies. About 10% of companies are those legacy companies we were touching on earlier. So
Mhm.
they're either companies that got a Series A funding and now they launched into the marketplace and they're hearing crickets and they're now scrambling. They don't know what to do. They're companies that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on an app creation. They launch into the marketplace. They hear crickets. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
They're companies that went ahead and built whatever, but they may have built it fundamentally incorrectly. And so now they're looking to go ahead and for lack of a better word, pivot because they still think their idea is valid. But we tell them and instruct them and take them through the process of how to do it the right way.
Mm, got it. Got it. So legacy, but like almost failed legacy ish.
Well, here's the thing, and this is why I say, is it failure or is it that they weren't able to get to the goal line with the thought that they had? So,
Yeah.
and what do I mean by that? Let me give you a quick example. Most tech companies are built ass backwards. All right. So here they are. They create this great technical solution. You're an IT person. You're a developer from a long time ago. You understand what I'm telling you. They create these technical teams to create a technical solution. All right. Then they go ahead and take this technical solution and they're now supposed to magically find a market for it. So then we hear about the mystical product market fit to be able to do this. Well, guess what? If they had created a team from the beginning with a chief marketing officer, with a creative director, with a social media manager to go ahead and identify the personas, identify the low-hanging fruit, create a voice for it, their product development would have most likely been different, and a different product or version of what they did would have been created so that they would then have a warm marketplace to launch into. It's something that should be done from the very beginning of ideation. Sales and marketing should not be an afterthought. Any company that is created today is not a widget maker. They're not a SaaS company. They're not a fintech company. They're not a consumer goods company. They are first and foremost a marketing and sales company. And that is what every damn company is. And they have to take that as a priority from the very beginning.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And I'm a huge advocate of sell before you create, which you could way more easily do in the service world than you can
Sure.
in a physical product world outside
Yeah,
of
but that's, hear me out. That's not necessarily true. So let me give you an
okay,
example.
awesome.
I won't name what the products were, but we were able, me personally, with my own companies and some other companies we've dealt with, we're able to get into Walmart, Target, everything else before we actually had the product. So I won't tell exactly how we did it, but for lack of a better word, we put these test cases of really what it was We had the buyer call. Yes, we're interested. We're doing resets in 6 months. And so during that period of time, we knew we had sales calls. We knew we had interest. So yeah, we created, certain test products to be able to go. But we didn't have to have that manufacturing setup. The product wasn't in the marketplace. We just basically created marketing materials and went at it.
That's awesome. And again, like, it's a creative solution. Like, it's I guess, like, for lack of a better way, kind of like what I said, like, it's easier to do it when you're selling a service, but that doesn't mean that there isn't an easy creative way to do it with a physical product like you guys figured out.
I think that almost in a way, pre-selling a service or testing it is almost in a way harder. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I'll tell you why.
Sweet.
Than a physical consumer good. All right. And there's a reason why. Because when you're dealing with a physical good, all right, here's one smooch made by Pharmalogical, one of our companies. That right off the bat, you're dealing with typically a different type of buyer, a buyer that's used to a tactile experience, a buyer that is open in a certain way to certain sales pitches that, unlike, let's say, a service, all right, it requires a different sales process. It requires a different sales cycle. So I could literally say something like, hey, we've got a new oat beverage that has, it's all natural, does this, it's a great Gatorade replacement. And they're like, well, let me taste it. That's the first thing. Okay. But if I'm able to get some taste in their mouth or something else, I've got them. I don't need to have the final product. I'd have them already on the interest when they say, let me taste it. Let me get the next steps. So consumer goods, you can sell. Do you have to have a visual? Yes. Do you have to have sell sheets or maybe a test website? Yes. But do you have to have everything there? God, no. Do you have to have manufacturing? No, absolutely not. You don't need a damn thing with manufacturing at all. Nothing.
Mm-hmm. Well, you could do that on the service side too, right?
Sure.
Like, you don't even need to have the service built, and it's more like, okay, is someone going to buy it? If so, go build it, right? Which I guess they're kind of similar.
You were talking earlier, and I didn't touch on this, but I think it's extremely important. You were talking about door-to-door sales. All right. Mm-hmm. Now, listen, my first business, I went door to door selling burpee seeds that I had sent $5 into out of the Spider-Man comic book into burpee seeds. And they sent me 50 packs of seeds. I went door to door, and the amount of life lessons that you learn doing that is just immeasurable. Okay. It sets you up for success. Well, even that technique, if that's the only thing that you have to do is go door to door and testing a market, testing an idea, testing whatever the fuck it is, that is going to give you so much more powerful feedback to be able to see, does this have legs? Is there a way to penetrate? Is there a way to create this service, this product, whatever it is?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And you just earn your stripes, like it's interesting. Obviously this is episode 250 or something, 250 something by the time this goes out. I've interviewed a lot of people, not just on this show, on our last show as well, and very successful people. And it's interesting. One of the most common threads amongst all of the most successful people that I've had the pleasure of connecting with is some sort of door-to-door or direct sales background, like legitimately just getting your teeth kicked in over and over and over again.
But go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, like, in earning your stripes like that, half of them sucked at it and half of them didn't last very long with it.
Right.
They went to go and build another company that made them $2 million a month or something absurd, like it's just the foundational piece where you earn your stripes, you build the thick skin, you're enabling yourself and building the skill set of being able to fight through adversity. And then you just build whatever else you want on top of it.
We were talking earlier off recording about how we've both been powerlifting, bodybuilding, et cetera, for years and years and years. And you said a statement that's very true, that once, and I'm paraphrasing, okay, I may not be using your exact words, but once you build the base, we can now do this fun stuff. We can do these other that other people can't do in the beginning stages. Well, guess what? That's what selling as a founder enables you to do. It gives you the base. It gives you the base for every business out there. It gives you the base for life because you run into every form of humanity possible out there when you go and knock on somebody's damn door.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not advocating definitely, but there are ways that it comes back to you in 100-fold, a millionfold.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Before I ask you the last question,
Yeah, shoot.
where do you hang out most on social? What's the website? Where can people learn what you guys are doing at Gusher?
Sure.
Plug away.
Okay. You can always find me at gusher.co, Gusher.co, gusher.co. That's pretty much where I live. Although I get pretty big on LinkedIn. I post a lot there socially, just in terms of my follower base. A lot of them are there. And that's really the best ways to reach is gusher.co or LinkedIn. And I'm easily found, Chris Joyce.
Awesome. So guys, both of those will be linked up. Get connected, show some love. I don't know what the calls to action on LinkedIn are, but like use all those reaction things. I don't know. Do all the things. All right. Chris, last question I have for you.
Yeah.
Going all the way back, 6 years old, first business, right? Then starting the adult entrepreneurship journey, we'll call it, 24 businesses deep, every industry known to man, 11,000 stores, however many countries you said, like just all over the place. Thoroughbred serial entrepreneur, all the journeys, the ups and downs you've learned throughout this entire process, this entire window. What has been the biggest lesson that you've learned that has yielded the most results and had the biggest impact on your life and in your business?
It's going to seem simple. Simple works. All right. It's not new. Okay. But I really think fundamentally, whether it's business, whether it's anything in life, it comes down to one thing. You never give up. Never give up, never give up, never give up, never give up. Being an entrepreneur is a roller coaster of awesomeness. There's only one person in this world that can stop that ride. It's not your mom. It's not your dad. It's not somebody else. It's not your business partner. It's not your connections. And there's only that one person. Who is it, Mike?
You.
And you got to remember that. Just decide not to give up and accomplish your dreams and what you set out to do. It's simple, but hard.
Boom. There it is. Chris, thanks for joining me, brother. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed this.
Thanks for having me.
100%.